Hi, Caspar here on the 13th of November 2017. I'm tasting a pretty old and pretty contentious actually Australian wine. This is the 2000 vintage of Eclipse from a winery called Noon, named after its founder Drew Noon. Stephen and Drew Noon are they called? Anyway, there we are. Latched onto by Robert Parker, who thought it was their wines were absolutely fantastic, wrote about them in very glowing terms. So this is Eclipse is 65% Grenache, 35% Syrah, bush vines, Barossa. Is it all from the Barossa? It just says South Australia on it, so not sure. And bottled unfiltered, and it's still remarkably red, I've got to say, in colour. When I poured it out, deep and red in colour. And the nose is completely, well, it's not completely over the top, but it's a very rich and slightly rather jammy mixture of nuts and plum and lots of spice, really. It's sort of like reminds me a bit of a 2003 Chateauneuf Pape, I must say. It's sort of it's Grenache that's had a lot of sun on it and been allowed to ripen fully. There's a slightly sort of putty-like nose as well. I mean, it's not unpleasant nose. It's just very, very rich and ripe and full on. And it's pretty rich and ripe and full on the palate as well. I mean, it's got some rich and ripe tannins, nicely fine textured, and it's got some acidity. Where that's come from, I'm not sure. But notable sort of scrunch of acidity to it. It's not got any massive length, but I mean, it's still firing along. Note of sort of smoky nuts, sort of grilled nuts on the nose. Yeah, it's a big, hairy-chested, Barossa style red wine. Obviously fully mature. I mean, Parker recommended drinking this up to 2013, and clearly it's still drinkable. I think even Robert Parker was slightly bamboozled by it. He didn't know quite what to make of it, but clearly did absolutely love it. I mean, this is a wine in full flow of maturity, clearly. I think you wouldn't want to drink too much of it unless you had an enormous piece of very, very rare and probably slightly exotic animal. A leg of zebra, waved over a campfire would be perfect. It's a big wine. It's the opposite of elegant, really. It's a bit of a sort of sweaty rugby player of a wine, but I think there are people who would get pleasure out of drinking it at 14.5% alcohol. There we are. It's a big one. It's also 2000 vintage Eclipse from Noon in South Australia. So lock up your daughters. It's rampaging around my glass.